Yeah, so welcome to everybody, and thank you again for the invitation. So we are at the Future Technologies Conference, and I would like to tell you what I think about the future of AI. In my view, we need to go from the left side to the right side. So when we build engineering systems like airplanes, we know every component. We can assess the properties, the quality, the function of every screw, every component in the airplane. If you build large airplanes, there are a few millions of them. We can also simulate and assess the interplay of these components, and this makes an airplane very safe and reliable. On the other hand, we have black box models, AI models such as large language models, but also image classifiers, which are also built of hundreds of thousands of components, which are intervened in an even more complex manner. But for these components, we don't know anything. We don't know their function. We don't have tools to assess the quality. We don't know how they interact with each other. So we are kind of dealing with black boxes. And in my view, we need to go from the right side to the left side. We need to make and inspect AI models such as engineers do for airplanes. Okay, so I will give you in this talk two examples for that. Two examples which we work on and where we develop tools which kind of allow to a certain extent to understand and analyze AI models. So one example is from medicine, from dermatology, skin cancer detection. You probably know there is AI models which are able to classify this kind of skin cancer, like images of Navi, and they are very accurate. They are able to detect melanoma and other types of cancer, but also tell you if it's not a cancer. And we wanted to know whether these methods follow the medical knowledge, whether they are using and relying on the ABCDE rule. Maybe if you went to a dermatologist, you know that if your Navi is asymmetric, if it has uneven borders, if the color is uneven, if its diameter is large, these are kind of features the medical doctors use to identify potential melanoma and to start looking at it more deeply. And we wanted to know is whether these AI models, which are just trained on data where we don't know anything about them, whether they also have learned these concepts and whether they are following this kind of medical textbook knowledge. So we need to develop, in order to find out, we need to develop methods which allow us to really inspect these models at component level. So this is what we kind of do, what I have been doing for the last 12 years. Basically, we started with methods, I call it the first wave of explainable AI, methods which allow us to identify the important features in the input data. So for instance, you have an image of a dog, and this image is classified as a dog, and we wanted to know what kind of features, what kind of pixels, which regions in the image were particularly important for the model to arrive at this prediction. So we have developed, like 10 years ago, like a method, layer-wise relevance propagation, which is a very popular method for very efficiently explaining predictions of complex AI models. So basically, I will not go into detail how it works, but basically you could think of it as a redistribution process where we kind of redistribute the output through the model backward to the input. So we can then find out how much every pixel has contributed to the prediction. And basically, we not only know how much every pixel has contributed, but we also know how much individual neurons, individual filters and channels of the model have contributed. So the second wave of XAI deals with another question. So here we are not trying to explain individual predictions, but really understand the model. So understand the internal components of the model. So for instance, you could ask, what kind of concepts is this one neuron encoding? Is it encoding color? Is it encoding shape? Is it encoding some other types of features? And people have developed a bunch of methods which can partly answer this question. And these methods works like that. So they kind of try to find examples which maximize the activation of this neuron. And then you can then say, okay, what kind of feature are these examples sharing? What is the visual concept these examples are sharing? And from that you can derive what kind of concept is represented by this neuron. So we have done that in our work. And for instance, you see here components for a concept which we called shades of black, or like different uneven distribution of black. And here you see on the button, you see like examples showing you different input images or input patches which are maximizing the activation of these neurons which I highlighted there. So these neurons kind of have the task to recognize these different color distributions and color variations in this melanoma. So they are quite important for detecting melanoma because this is a feature which is quite important. Okay. And we recently moved forward proposing a method, I call it the third wave of XAI, where we really get a truly component level understanding, where we combine these prediction with the model, with the data. So we published this work at Nature Machine Intelligence 2 months ago or so it's very, very recent. And basically what we want to do is we want to first connect the model to the data. So for every component of the model, we find these kind of examples which describe the concept which the model is encoding. So as we done here, but here we do it like for every component, for every neuron of this model. Then we use a foundation model, like a CLIP or some kind of pre-trained model, which is able to make sense of these components. So we don't need to have a human in the loop anymore, but we have another model, like a CLIP model, like a pre-trained model, which is able to tell you or to name what these sets of images have in common. So you could give these images to this type of CLIP model, and this model would kind of tell you what is a common feature these examples are sharing. So in some sense, this CLIP is bringing semantics to the representation. So we are able to automatically, without the human in the loop, kind of through the use of this CLIP and through the use of these concept examples, tell what kind of concepts are encoded by this individual neuron. And you can also connect it to the LRP approach, which I told you before, where we kind of, for every prediction, for every individual prediction, we can say, okay, which components were important. So we have a kind of connection between the prediction to the model, and from the model to the data, and from the data to the interpretation, which we get by CLIP. So basically, we have a understanding of the interactions within the model, of the individual components, also how they relate to the prediction. So this is kind of a new level of understanding which allows us to study this type of questions. What type of features are these classifiers using? So basically, you can even do better. You can even search for concepts and ask, like this method, whether certain concepts are encoded. So here we did like a textual search. So we typed in the word watermark, and what we get are the neurons. So these neuron numbers are encoded here, or the channels of the model encoding the concept watermark. So again, these neurons these are the concept examples which describe the concepts which is encoded by this neuron. And because we use this clip model, we can kind of connect the textual description of the concept with the visual description. So this is what we get from clip. So we have kind of a Google for searching within the model what concepts are there. And we can also label all the knowledge which has been learned by the model. So we can have a vocabulary, concept vocabulary, and see whether all these concepts which are in our vocabulary are really present in the model. And for instance, and in this case, you may find that maybe some of them are present, but there is also some kind of neurons which are encoding, we call it dark matter, something which is not present in the vocabulary. These may be concepts which are not on the list, which you kind of provided, or this can be like very noisy concepts or some kind of things which you are not describing by these labels. But this allows us to automatically kind of check for the knowledge inside this model. We can compare different models. We can compare different architectures and see whether they have learned the same concepts or not, and or do this all without a human in the loop. So back to the question, how to validate our melanoma detector. Yeah, we have given like a list of valid concepts and a list of maybe spurious concepts you don't want the model to rely on. And we saw that although this skin cancer detector works very well when you just take these performance values, it relied on some concepts which are in the spurious list, so which it shouldn't rely on. For instance, it uses the fact on some of these images there is a band-aid or there are certain markings on the skin, and these kind of features were also used as part of the prediction strategy. So these images, I mean, we didn't take it our own. They come from an international data set for melanoma detection. But you see that in this data, there are these kind of features which are really medically irrelevant, but the model is picking up them in the decision making. So we want to avoid this. We want a component level understanding of the model. And with these methods, at least we can get one step closer to that. And we have also developed methods which allow us to correct the model. So not only to say, okay, this model is wrong and has some problem, but we also have methods which allow us to fix it, to debug it, and to force the model to not use these features when classifying melanoma. Okay, so this was kind of the first part of the talk. Now we come to LLM and LLM's hallucinations. This is also very recent work, a work which we will present next month at NeurIPS. So also very, very recent. I mean, there are many challenges with large language models. Here are some. So yeah, some of these LLMs, when they have been trained, they have some outdated knowledge, right? So they may say the Queen Elizabeth is the current monarch, although she is dead. Sometimes they hallucinate, they invent things, or they bring things together which do not fit. You know all of it. You get sometimes citations which are not from papers which are not existing, or saying that the Eiffel Tower is in Berlin. Or sometimes they are simply wrong. They're doing some, or they're misbehaving in certain ways. And people have tried to tackle these challenges. I mean, for the outdated info, you can use RAGs, retrieval augmented generation. So you can give the LLM access to the internet or access to Wikipedia, and then it can kind of get the current information about the topic and use this information in the answer. So this is one way to deal with it. When you want to correct the model, there are certain ways of fine-tuning or model steering. So people try different things to make you, to shift your model, force your model to behave in a certain way and not in another. But here in this talk, I would like to focus mainly on these hallucinations. And one remedy which I see, I call it citation-based explanation. So if we provide true citations to the answers provided by the LLM, then this can at least partly solve the problem. So what I mean by citation-based explanations, so if I ask the LLM how much dust is blown out of Sahara each year, so there are two ways the LLM can answer. So either it knows the answers from training, it has learned it during training, so I call it a parametric answer, or you give the LLM access to some external information. And this external information can be validated. It can be Wikipedia or some other trusted information which it can use when answering the question. And in this case, if you give like the LLM access to some trusted information, and in this case you can kind of force the model to rely on this validated information and not make up answers by bringing things together from memory. And we can even do better. We can also pinpoint in this external information where this answer is coming from. So in this case, we ask the LLM how much dust is blown out of Sahara each year. The answer is 182 million tons. And this answer kind of came from this external information, in this case from Wikipedia. And because we gave the LLM access to Wikipedia, and we can kind of explain and pinpoint which part of the article, which article was the source for the answer. And this is what journalists, what researchers do every day. So they have a claim and they give a citation for the source. And this is what we want to do also in these models. And please don't, this is different than because sometimes if you ask these LLM models, they make up citations. They tell you that something is, they make a statement and say, okay, see this paper, but often this paper doesn't exist. So we are not generating the citation, but we are kind of, as done in this LRP part, we are kind of backtracking the decision process and pinpointing that. So we're kind of undoing the decision making and telling and visualizing what source was important for this decision. So it's not that we tell the LLM, oh, please tell us where you get this information from, because if you do that, sometimes the LLM makes up these citations. Okay, so we can, what we in our recent experiments even kind of found out is that there are certain elements in the LLM, so these attention heads, which are responsible for processing parametric information, and attention heads which are responsible for processing in context information. So in other words, if you ask like how much dust is blown out of Sahara each year, so some of these parametric heads retrieve kind of information from memory of the LLM, from the trained memory about Sahara, about all these things which are related to the question. These are kind of the retrieval heads. And the in-context heads are retrieving information, the relevant information from the context. So if you give like Wikipedia as context, these in-context heads are representing the Sahara information which comes from the context. And by trading off this parametric and in-context heads, you can to some extent control where the answer is coming from. And if you feed your LLM with trusted information and you have this level of control, you can make sure that the answer really relies on the trusted information, and you can pinpoint and you can explain and cite the sources for the LLM answer. Thank you very much.
Who wants to start? Brilliant. The gentleman at the back. Good morning. Good morning, Christian. Here's the mic. Go ahead. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the first question.
Very simple question.
Perfect.
Which question should we not raise to an LLM?
Which question should we not raise?
Not ask an LLM.
It depends, I think, on the application. I mean, sometimes you have classified information. You don't want the LLM to reveal any secrets. Sometimes you have maybe sensitive information about how to build a bomb or how to do things which maybe not everybody should know. So I think there are many scenarios where we say, okay.
It's just with regard to that we avoid hallucination, that we get a proper source for it.
I mean, it can be, of course, that there is no source, that you don't have external information which you can kind of check against. Then things, I think, become more complicated. But in many scenarios, for instance, in the administrations, they want to have a chatbot which is interacting with the ordinary man, and then they want to give an answer which is maybe consistent with the current regulation or the current law. So they want to make sure that this LLM is not only like giving you information about how to apply for a passport or how to do certain administrative tasks, but also links this information to some paragraphs or some kind of regulations which give you like the trust that this is not made up. Because I think the worst thing that can happen is that the LLM is making up something which is not true and which is not consistent with the current regulation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for the question, for the answer. We've got a gentleman at the back, and also I would love to, and a gentleman at the front. I would also love to encourage ladies to ask any questions. I don't think we have heard a question coming from a lady, so you would have a priority if there is a brave lady who wants to ask a question. Was there? Okay, this is just a friendly encouragement, like no pressure, okay? No pressure at all. So we've got two gentlemen who wanted to ask, the one in a green jacket, and then you gentlemen over there. Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's super important to have like this level of explainability and things like that, and just like thinking all the way of like how we can do it even better. I would be interested in your experience when it comes to like trying to explain ARG systems and things like that. I think that we experienced now and then is then as soon as you try to get more questions answered in one thing or in one prompt or question, then you would probably get from just like one place in some form of document. The models typically start to hallucinate even more than they would without the parts of the document. And we always have a very hard time like explain this. I mean, it makes sense why they would hallucinate, but perhaps you have some form of way on how we can perhaps find out more about why it does that or how to avoid that.
Yeah, so with those methods which I presented, you can kind of track down every output token to the source document or to the part which is important. So I think if you have like a longer answer which relates to different questions, then you could potentially track down like all these components of the answer and then check maybe if they are consistent or if some of them are not relying on the information. But of course you could, I guess you can construct always cases where things are contradictory and then the LLM sometimes doesn't know what to do and then has to decide whether to follow this way or this way. But at least we can kind of afterwards tell you which way it follows.
Okay, that's nice. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Gentleman over here. Good morning.
Thank you for your presentation. Many people are bothered about the nature of generative AI and hallucination and some of the things that come with it. Now, the challenge remains with all your explanation. Thank you for it. Do we think that could be explainability, or that is rather maybe tracing source?
Yeah,
let me just add something on top of that. Because we are noticing that there are lots of vocabulary coming up with AI being nascent. A lot of vocabulary coming up, words like explainability, words like trust. And when you dig deeper into them, For example, trust, which I've taken interest in studying it, we realize that the word trust should not be used for something like AI. Because trust is about emotions. You should be able to feel sorry, remorse, if you've done something wrong. And then we say, oh, he's trusted, because we are all prone to error. Now, AI may not be able to feel remorseful. So can we still think that AI can be trusted? Just like that, when we go to explainability, is this exactly what you would love to think that should be explainability?
Great question.
Thank you so much.
I think there has been a lot of discussion of trust and trustworthy and what is the right word. Also for explainability, I think there has been a lot of discussion what an explanation is. Honestly, I'm less a philosopher on this side, but more like an engineer. So for me, like there are different types of explanations, and this is a particular type. You could call it source tracing, or you can call it citation-based explanation. But I don't try in my research to define like a philosophical concept of what explainability is. But I understand that in certain areas, these concepts are well defined, and they are maybe not matching what we use as explainability. But I take more like an engineering perspective, and I see it as a tool to learn something about the AI behavior.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And we also have a question from the online audience. So dear online audience, thank you so much for asking the questions and posting them to the chat. And I'm just going to give it over to my colleague Supriya over there to share the question that came from our online delegates. Supriya, over here.
So Torsten is saying, I'm researching sound-grounded RAG for newsroom and measuring explanation stability under seed prompt perturbations. Question is, which head-level signals best predict groundedness and hallucinations in this setting? And how do they correlate with the quality of evidence chains, source to spans coverage, contradiction rate?
Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a very detailed question, so I would need to kind of think more about it and also maybe interact with the person what he means exactly. But I can say this, that what we do is not perturbation based. It's relying on a different principle. So we are kind of tracking down or redistributing the output to the input in a very efficient manner. Perturbation-based explanations are often much more costly because you need to check the reaction of the model to the perturbations. There are a lot of downsides of perturbation-based explanations. So I think on this technical level, we are doing slightly something else, which we think, and also in our experiments, works better than perturbation-based analysis. But to some of the other aspects in the question, I think I would need to interact with the person to give a better answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your questions over here, people in the room, but also our dear online delegates. So one more round of applause for Professor Wojciech Samek. Thank you so much for being with us.